Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I hope if you're on the East Coast, you got some time today to go out and enjoy the beautiful weather. We're here to talk about the Master of Healthcare Innovation degree, or the MHCI, as we call it, which is the first fully online degree program here at the University of Pennsylvania. First, I'll start off by introducing myself. My name is Catherine Rodella. I'm the program manager for the Master of Healthcare Innovation, so I work on the administrative side of the program. And the biggest part of my job is supporting students throughout their entire career in the degree, all the way from when they're applicants through alumni. So I'm also the first point of contact for prospective students, for applicants, and for current students in the program. Also on the call today is Adam Zolkover. Adam, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Sure. Hi, I'm Adam Zolkover. I am the Associate Director for Online Instructional Design. So what I do is work with faculty to help translate their expertise into great online courses.
Thanks. And we'll hear from Adam a little bit later when we're talking about what the online courses look like. So what we'll be covering today is a good general overview about the basics and logistics of the degree. We'll talk about the curriculum. We'll get to hear from a couple of current students about their experience in the degree. Like I said, Adam will show us what it's like to learn online. We'll cover important information like tuition and admissions, go over a couple of certificate options that are also available. And again, at the end of the presentation, we'll have dedicated Q&A time, but if you'd like to ask something before we get to that point, you can go ahead and type it in the chat. So first, some background about the degree. The Master of Healthcare Innovation, or the MHCI, is a master's degree conferred by the University of Pennsylvania, specifically by the Perelman School of Medicine. It was designed from its beginning to be an online program using the best and most effective online learning practices. So this is not a degree that switched to online because of the pandemic. It's always been online and will continue to be online. It's housed in the Department of Medical Ethics and Health Policy at the Perelman School of Medicine here at Penn. And the degree is designed to help you improve healthcare delivery and adapt to the rapidly changing healthcare landscape. So these are skills that are really essential for healthcare professionals, maybe now more than ever. And the degree is designed to help you answer certain practical questions about how you do your work. Things like, how can you help shape policy in healthcare? How can you influence patient and provider behaviors? How do you identify inefficiency in the system? How do you test solutions through rapid iteration? And these are topics that, while they're really important, probably weren't covered in your previous degrees, whether it was in med school or nursing school or in an MBA. So these specific skills are what set the MHCI apart. So what will students actually do in the program? First and foremost, you're going to build a network. That's a major part of the program. Your fellow students become your resource network. Our students are professionals from a huge variety of different healthcare industries and different roles, and so students learn a ton from each other. You'll develop specialized skills for designing solutions to systemic problems in the healthcare system. This is not a research-focused degree. It's meant to be a practical degree. You'll practice skills and tools that you can apply immediately in the work you do now in your current role. And these skills will also inform the way that you approach future roles in healthcare as well. And of course, you'll get a chance to apply these new skills and concepts that you learn about in lab courses. I'll go into more detail about what the lab courses entail later. But by the end of the degree, you'll be equipped to actually implement an innovation project in the real world. So the Master of Healthcare Innovation, obviously from its name, is a degree in innovation. But innovation is kind of a hot word right now, and it can mean a lot of different things in different contexts. So what does it mean in the context of this degree? Innovation here is a methodology. So specifically, it's a way of identifying problems and solving problems in the healthcare system at all different levels of the system. And the MHCI is meant to give you the tools to accomplish this, identifying and solving problems in healthcare. You'll work on skills in two main areas, innovation and leadership. So this particular combination, innovation and leadership, is what distinguishes the MHCI from, say, an MBA or something like an MHA, which will focus on different types of skill sets. So the innovation skills you'll learn about could include things like idea generation and complex problem solving. Leadership skills you would learn include things like communicating ideas, networking, persuasion to get your ideas heard and out into the world. And just like the innovation field itself, the MHCI is a very interdisciplinary degree. We have faculty who come from a lot of different backgrounds. Many faculty come from the School of Medicine and from the Department of Medical Ethics and Health Policy where the degree is housed. There are also teaching faculty from Wharton Business School, Penn Law School, the Penn Medicine Center for Healthcare Innovation, as well as Penn Nursing and the Design School. And faculty are renowned experts in the curriculum's four main topic areas. So these four topics kind of fall under the innovation and leadership buckets, and they are health policy, behavioral economics, operations management, and innovation methodologies. Our faculty members, for example, Dr. Zeke Emanuel and Dr. Kevin Volp, who are founding faculty of the program, they're active, very influential decision makers in their fields at the national and international level. So you get this great opportunity to access their expertise. You'll have the opportunity to interact with them in weekly live sync classes, which we'll explain a little bit more about later. And it's this very distinctive combination of faculty expertise and the level of faculty quality that you probably wouldn't find in other degree programs. So again, by gaining foundations in these four areas, you'll be able to meet those two goals of the program, identifying and solving problems that you're facing in your work in healthcare. Let's get a little more into the detail of the curriculum. This is a bird's eye view of what the curriculum looks like. Obviously, this shows the 20-month version of the curriculum. 20 months is the shortest amount of time you can complete the degree in. There's also a 3-year option. Sometimes students want to spread it out over 3 years, either to spread out the financial commitment a little bit or spread out the time commitment a little bit more. But either way, whether you're doing a degree in 20 months or in 3 years, you're taking these same exact courses, and it's the same exact degree requirements, just a different overall time frame. And let's go through it a little bit. Every school year starts off with the MHCI seminar. That's that first green block in the upper left you see there. And the seminar is a virtual event with orientation activities, educational activities, social activities that gets you ready for the school year. And I'll talk about that in more detail in a little bit. Then after the seminar, you're taking online courses for the rest of the school year. MHCI courses are on a little bit different than a traditional degree program because you take just one course at a time, and each of those courses is typically 4 or 6 weeks long. So instead of taking multiple semester-long courses at the same time, you're taking one intensive course at a time to focus on that topic. Typically on the 20-month curriculum, there's a 1-week break in between each of those courses. On the 3-year track, there might be some longer breaks between courses depending on your schedule. And then in each of those courses, students can usually spend around 13 to 15 hours per week on schoolwork, and that's total both what you would consider in and out of class time. So the blue courses you see here are the core courses. They're required for all students to take. They're 6 weeks long. Students will also take 4 lab courses, which you can see in yellow here. And in labs, students will do mini projects and assignments to practice applying concepts that they've learned from the core courses. Finally, students also take 2 electives, the pink courses you see here, in which they'll be able to choose from a selection of topics that meet their interests. And electives, just like the core courses, are 6 weeks long. And then take a look at the final semester in year 2, that spring semester. You'll see a green event there called Innovation Weekend. So in their final semester of the program, students meet with their cohort in person for this Innovation Weekend event, and I'll get more into detail about that. But Innovation Weekend focuses on networking and idea sharing and is meant to prepare you for life after the MHCI. So I know that was a lot of information about the curriculum. Does anybody have any questions so far? If you do, you can go ahead and type it in the chat box. A little bit more about the lab courses. Again, the lab courses are meant to help you gain a deeper understanding of concepts that you'll cover in the core courses by giving you a chance to put them into practice. This usually will be in the form of mini projects or assignments that you're given throughout the 4-week lab course. So for example, in the behavioral economics lab, students get a case study to analyze, and then they're asked to write a proposal for a behavioral economics intervention. So it's often something like that. It's independent work, but students often are asked to review and provide feedback on other students' work in the labs. And I want to draw special attention to the final 2 labs in the program, Pitching Innovation, Building a Case for Transformation, which are highlighted in blue here. In these 2 labs, which you'll always take in the final semester of the program, you're going to be asked to draw on your work experience to actually develop an idea for a project and get ready to implement that project. So by the end of the degree, you'll have a fully developed project proposal in hand that's ready to be implemented in the real world. And this can be a project that you're already doing anyway for work, and you can get it ready through the course, or you can come up with an idea for a new project that you want to take on. Here are examples of the elective topics that are being offered this year. Elective offerings might change from year to year, but this gives you an idea of the kinds of topics that could be available. Just like the core courses, electives are taken in 6-week blocks. And let me pause and see. It looks like there are a few questions that came in the chat. Can you transfer credits into the program? It depends. It's something that's looked at on a case-by-case basis. Potentially, you might be able to transfer 2 courses from another degree into the MHCI as electives if they're relevant to the MHCI's mission. But that's something, again, if you apply and are accepted, we'll look at on a case-by-case basis and see what classes may be able to fit into the degree. Is there an advisor to help with navigating the program? As far as academic advising and things like which classes you need to take and how you meet requirements, yeah, that's something that I provide, as well as Holly Fernandez-Lynch, who's our assistant faculty director. And I see some questions about how the online classes work. I'll hold off on those questions for now because we will talk a lot more about that in a little bit. If you start out in the 20-month program and need to extend to the 3-year tracker, is that a possibility, or do you have to decide ahead of time? We do ask students to pick a track at the beginning of the program, but there's flexibility. They can switch between tracks if they start taking a few classes and realize that they really need to spread it out more, or if they'd rather take the 20-month track instead. All right, I'll move on for now in the interest of time, but if your question didn't get answered, we'll do our best to come back to that in a bit. So in that curriculum slide, you saw that there are 2 kinds of events that students attend throughout the degree. The first one is the seminar, which is a virtual event. And seminar is required for students to attend annually. So they'll go to that event every year. They're in the program in late August to kick off the school year. So If you're in the 20-month track, you'll attend it twice. If you're on the 3-year track, you'll end up attending it 3 times total. And the seminar is a way to get students ready for the school year. You'll get a chance to get to know the other students in the program and to get to know the faculty and staff. There are a lot of orientation activities to get you ready. You'll practice learning all of the online tools before you need to ever start taking classes. And there's also some educational activities. We have really engaging panels with healthcare innovation experts. We hear from students it's a lot like summer camp, kind of. It's sort of intensive, but we do have fun, and students build bonds quickly. It's a really interactive, engaging event. And again, that's every year in the program virtually. And then in their final year of the program, students attend Innovation Weekend. That's something that they'll attend once in the program in their final year. It'll be in person on Penn's campus in Philadelphia over a 2-day weekend. And Innovation Weekend is meant to prepare students for life after the MHCI. So the focus is really on networking and idea sharing. Students will get to pitch ideas and get feedback on it. They'll also have an opportunity to meet alumni and network with alumni who are invited back for part of the weekend. And even though we're really hoping by February 2022 we can have in-person events, I just have to include my caveat that any plans for in-person events are just dependent on public health measures at the time. Who are MHCI students? I mentioned that they are mid-career healthcare professionals. They come from many different backgrounds in healthcare, but they all have a shared goal of improving the way that healthcare is delivered. Currently, there are 80 students in the program, so those are split across 2 cohorts. For this next incoming cohort, this coming fall, I'm expecting around 50 students in the cohort, which is large enough for you to encounter, diverse ideas and different experiences, but it's still small enough for students to receive the kind of attention and support that the program is known for. On average, students have about 13 years of professional experience in healthcare, but there's a big range there. Some of our earlier career students have about 3 years of experience, and then we have students who are senior in their careers, maybe C-suite executives who have 25, 30 years plus of professional experience, and they come from all over the U.S. and abroad. On the left, you can see a list of some of the examples of the types of roles students have. So they cover both clinical and non-clinical roles at all different levels of the healthcare system. And on the right is a list of examples of some of the different sectors that they come from. So you can see it's a really mixed bag. And this is definitely not an exhaustive list of all the kinds of healthcare professionals that could be a fit for this program. This kind of variety is something that we hear constantly from students that they find really valuable because they're able to learn a lot from their fellow students. And if your background is maybe not directly in healthcare, but your professional experience is related to healthcare in a way, you're still welcome to apply. I would just encourage you to, in your application, in the personal statement, make sure you make a really strong case for how your experience will translate into an impactful career in healthcare. And these students, even though they're coming from many different backgrounds, many different perspectives, they're all passionate people, again, who really want to improve healthcare delivery. And their reasons for doing the program tend to fall into 3 main buckets. Some students want to improve the work that they're doing in their current role, in their current organization. Some students have recently taken on or are about to take on a new role, maybe a more leadership role, and they want to make sure they have the skills needed to succeed in it. And finally, some students are aspiring to move into a more leadership role or maybe make a career transition in the future. And I'm really happy today that we have a couple of students who are kind enough to join us and talk about their experience in the program. Andrea Cook is the Director of Legislative and Regulatory Policy at the Blue Cross Blue Shield Association. Andrea is in her first year in the MHCI. And Jean Riley is a trauma surgeon for Tower Health here in the Philadelphia area, and also works for the clinical practices of the University of Pennsylvania. Jean is just about done with the degree and will be finishing up this spring. So Andrea and Jean, if you're on here, I'd like to ask you to please unmute yourself and turn your video on.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Andrea. So first, I'd just like to ask you to briefly introduce yourself. What do you do and what's your background? Andrea, would you like to start?
Sure. I'm Andrea Cook. I'm at Blue Cross Blue Shield Association, and we're a trade organization that represents 35 of the Blue Cross Blue Shield plans across the country, which represents 110 million members. And I specifically work on ACA activities and exchanges, and most recently, because of COVID, policy related to COVID and health disparities and those specific things, but mainly federal legislation and regulatory policy.
Thanks. All right, Jean, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, everybody. I'm Gene Riley. I am a trauma surgeon and general surgeon at Tower, as Catherine was saying. But I'm also board certified in clinical informatics, so I have kind of a dual role. So in addition to my surgical work, more recently I've been kind of chief medical information officer at Tower, which has sort of been a little bit of an entree into more of an administrative type of a role. So, for myself, starting to think about what the next 5 or 10 years would look like, that's sort of how I found myself in this program, kind of like Catherine was saying, just sort of trying to explore what that might look like.
Thanks. The first question I'd like to ask both of you, and we'll start with Andrea again, just keep the order the same. Why did you decide to do the MHCI?
Well, as a mid-level professional and after working on the ACA for 10 plus years and actually noting today is the 11th anniversary of the ACA being signed, I just wanted to reevaluate my skills and to see where I can make improvements. And another important thing for me was to get different perspectives from other professionals. And that's what I really love about the program, talking to clinical professionals, people in the pharmaceutical areas, IT consultants, and, just having discussions about, what I'm working on and what they're working on. So it's really an opportunity to continue to learn, improve my skills, and also the exposure to the wonderful faculty and professors at the university has been really a great experience.
Great, thanks. How about you, Jean? Why did you decide to do the MHCI?
Well, like I said, I within the last few years started to take on more of a leadership role with clinical informatics at the organization. And that, along with more clinical and academic roles, are really pointing toward, on a trajectory towards more of a leadership role within the organization. So that's not really a skill set that they teach very well in medical school. And in talking to people about where to go from here, a lot of colleagues were recommending like a certified physician executive certification or a master's in business administration. And the thing that I really enjoy with my roles is really more kind of identifying where systems can be improved and designing and building solutions. And so serendipitously, while I was sort of trying to figure that out, the MHCI email showed up, and it really was sort of right up my alley in terms of what I could expect to get out of it. like, understanding the behavioral economics and change management and getting people to buy into and accept that change, and understanding the healthcare landscape and where the opportunities are, is all a big part of it. So, MHCI has really kind of worked out for me in that regard.
Yeah, great. Thank you. One question I get a lot is how can I do this degree while I'm working full time? And all of our students work full time and have really busy schedules. So, maybe Andrea, can you tell us a little bit about how you balance school with your work and personal responsibilities?
Yeah, I think at the beginning is the biggest adjustment, determining the time frames. But ahead of time, you'll know when the classes are scheduled, so I put them on my calendar. Like yesterday, we had a class scheduled from 12 to 1, so I have that time already designated to do that. And then over time, you will schedule blocks of time to do your different assignments. There's a pattern to the discussions that you work on after the live class and the responses to that, so you can really block that out in your classwork, so you have enough time to do that. I also think during orientation, the previous cohort gave recommendations and suggestions on, downloading the PDFs as you're going through that. So they gave us a lot of information on how to work through these classes. And so I think that was very helpful at the beginning.
Yeah, it's very predictable overall, so people can kind of know ahead of time what their schedule is going to need to be like. Jean, anything you'd want to add to that?
Well, I would just say my situation maybe is unique. I think my work schedule is probably more unpredictable than others.
Mm,
Um, and some classes are more demanding than others. Not in terms of their rigor, but just the frank amount of time that's necessary to complete their assignments or whatever. So, for me, there certainly have been times where the time that I had budgeted to complete an assignment just got taken by an unexpected emergency at the hospital or something like that. And the MHCI team has been really um, uh, understanding that life happens, and um, there, of course, is, lateness policies and whatnot. But generally speaking, I mean, the idea is to facilitate an environment that allows you to be successful, and that has been certainly been my experience.
yeah, all of our students have really full lives and things happen, like you said, so we're ready for that and expect that. Uh, Andrea, I know you're still in your first year of the program, but have you seen the MHCI have an impact on your work so far?
I think it immediately had an impact on my work because of COVID and going into um, advocating and working on the CARES Act, and also at the same time addressing health disparities and working on legislation. I had the opportunity to directly talk to physicians about their patients and what's going on in their office, and any issues they have with social determinants of health and all of those things, having specific conversations about the practice and how that's going. And then I could incorporate those thoughts in my analysis and recommendations for the policies that we were supporting, and also, creating plans and providing that information to our health plan. So um, it definitely has impacted on a continuous basis everything that I'm doing.
That's awesome. So, and Jean, could you talk a bit about how it's impacted your work? And maybe could you also mention how the program may have influenced your career path? There's somebody in the chat who sounds like comes from a similar background to you.
Yeah, actually, that's helpful because I was trying to type and talk at the same time, so I'll just say it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, um, for me personally, and this may not be universalizable, but uh, as I kind of mentioned in the intro, I was already kind of on a certain trajectory. And So I think it hasn't necessarily impacted the direction that I would go, although I can see how that would happen. But for me personally, I think it's been more about just allowing me to be more confident in the new role
Mm,
and confirming that, you know, this decision seems to have been a good one and that there are plenty of additional opportunities as, my personal and professional goals get fulfilled, that this, I think, opens additional doors that may lead down, an even more distant path. So, I think the ability, so like I said, I'm already sort of in a role where I have a certain amount of influence in terms of the clinical informatics stuff that goes on in change management, but certainly being armed with some of the concepts that you learn in terms of behavioral economics and hospital operations and those kinds of things, and knowing better that you're coming up with a cogent solution, or you know having a much better formed idea about um, the kinds of things that are likely to make a solution successful, rather than going in with a bunch of uncertainty and then, it being a crapshoot whether it's actually going to work out or not. It's a much more
yeah.
comfortable place to be in when you've got these arrows in your quiver.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so just one more question for the two of you. Very briefly, can you tell us a little bit about the kind of network that you've built in the program? And Andrea, could you start?
I think our cohort is, very connected. We have a Slack that we communicate and pass information to each other, outside of class, and sometimes we'll have Zoom happy hours and have discussions about different things. And then in our last class, in our healthcare economics class, we actually set up an additional discussion time on Sundays just to further discuss what we were talking about in class. And that was, outside of any class assignment and just talking, which was very nice because, you have the consultant perspective and, someone who's in research, the policy. I've really gotten to know my classmates very well through, very different opportunities.
That's awesome. Thanks. So Jean, anything you'd like to say about the network that you've built as you think about, finishing up the degree soon?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm not a Slack guy, so I know there's a lot that's going on Slack, but I'm not there that often. But um, I mean, the cohort is very um, friendly in that, and supportive, I would say.
Hmm.
So, there's some classes where, you've had some immersion in it in the past and you sort of can go into it very confidently. But then there's other stuff that you've never heard it in your life, and there's certainly um, some discomfort about going into these things cold and hoping that
Sure.
you're not going to sound like an idiot. But the cohort is very supportive, um, and I think that has helped make the relationships durable. So I, I'm not that close to Philadelphia where we're just going to like run into each other, just, unless it's through some organized thing necessarily. But I have definitely had contact with some of my cohort classmates who are just, especially non-clinical ones, who
Hmm.
maybe have an idea in their head that they want to kick around and see, like, does it pass muster from a clinician's perspective? Um, and that's been fairly gratifying to be able to be the trusted opinion in that way. I think the real power of these relationships is probably going to become more apparent after the class is over, than
Yeah.
now, because there's so much pre-planned, organized interaction around the assignment and so on and so forth, that it's not necessarily just a spontaneous, organic interaction. But I think, certainly I know the people well enough at this point that it's kind of funny, when we get into discussions, we're past the point where it's all new. Like, everybody has a voice, a particular voice. And when you read their papers, like, you can read it in their voice and you know where they're
Yeah.
coming from, and you can read between the lines. And it leads to a more substantive discussion, I think, because you can kind of, get that secondary meaning behind what they're trying to say, and maybe either agree with them or disagree with them in a more sophisticated way, I guess. Um, so I think it's been really good to be able to develop these relationships with these people, with these folks.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Jean and Andrea, thank you so much. It's so helpful to hear about the experience directly from students instead of just from me the whole time. So thank you again. I'll get back to sharing my screen. We'll move on to learning a bit about the course experience. So you've just heard a lot about the student experience, and obviously a huge part of that is what the online learning experience is like. The online courses are designed to be flexible for full-time working professionals. Jean mentioned a little bit that, when things come up with work and things get busy, there are ways that we can be flexible. There are deadlines for assignments, but the content is always available on demand, so you can access it and work on it whenever your schedule allows. And again, you can expect to spend around 13 to 15 hours per week on a pretty regular, predictable rhythm that Adam will talk a little bit about. All the courses are online on a platform called Canvas, which you'll see in a moment. And again, you're taking those intensive courses one at a time, either in a 6-week core or elective course or 4-week lab. And in the courses, you can expect to find 3 types of content. There's media, things like engaging lecture videos by faculty and interviews with special guests, readings to provide further context for the lectures, interactive content, so things like weekly discussions where you explore lecture content with other students. There's also weekly interaction with faculty, and usually that's through a live synchronous session. And then finally, there are assessments to gauge how you're understanding the content. So you might see things like quizzes, different kinds of homework assignments, and each class has a final project or paper at the end that you'll work on. So now I'm going to hand it over to Adam for a minute, who's going to show you what one of the courses on Canvas actually looks like.
Hi, everybody. Can somebody please confirm that you can see my screen, Catherine?
Yep, I can see it.
Great. So just very briefly, what I wanted to show you is the inside of one of our courses. This is the American Healthcare System. It is the first course that you would take as a student in the master's. And really what I want to show you are 3 things: that our courses are supported, that they're predictable, and that they're social. So the supported part you can see right away. This is the very top of the front page, and you can see already that you have contact information for the faculty, for the TAs, and for technical support for the course. These aren't just on-demand self-paced courses. There's always somebody on the other side of the computer screen who's there to provide feedback, to help you flesh out your ideas, and to answer any questions you have about the pace of the course or technical aspects. Rolling down the screen just a minute, you can see right here the topics and key dates section of the course. And this really demonstrates the way that our courses are predictable. There are some exceptions, like you can see in weeks 2 and 3 for holidays and stuff like that. But for the most part, all of our work is due on Sundays and Tuesdays. This lets you establish a rhythm right off the bat in the program so that you can figure out how to adjust your work schedule, or so that you can figure out when you need to start working on class stuff in order to make those deadlines work. And it's not just for one class, it's for all of the classes. By the time you get to your last class, it's really well ingrained what the rhythm is of every week of the program. The next thing that I wanted to show you is the course modules page, and I think this will demonstrate the social aspect if you just bear with me for a minute here. So the modules page of the course is an outline of the entirety of the course. Like everything that's in the course, you can see here, the order that we'd like you to do it in, all of that. So what you can see here is week 1, and you can see there's an overview of week 1, there's some material to watch, there's some material to read, and then there's your activities for the course. And based on just the titles here, Interact and Build Your Knowledge, you can see that the vast majority of what you're doing each week is interactive, it's social. So that includes things like synchronous classes, which I think Catherine explained just a little bit. But you can see the inside of the assignment for a synchronous class here. What you're doing is interacting with faculty. You can ask questions. You're also interacting with your classmates. You can have discussions. All of that stuff is in a synchronous class, and it's a learning experience, but it's also kind of a networking opportunity. It's one of the places, like Jean said, where you really get to know the voices of the people who you're learning with. The other thing that I wanted to show you is a weekly discussion. And I know it can seem a little bit hackneyed if you've taken an online course before, that our courses are set up so that you make one discussion post and answer 2 responses a week. But in this context, it really works as a way to get to know your classmates. What we've done is taken pretty much everything that can be social and made it social. So instead of having papers, what you have are these discussions where you're able to articulate your ideas. You're able to read the ideas of your classmates who are also already experts in healthcare. And you're able to give each other feedback, get the perspectives of your classmates that you might not otherwise get. And over the course of all of these classes, of all of these months, you really get to know each other this way. The last thing that I wanted to address is currency in our courses. I know that a lot of people ask, especially with the pandemic, sort of how do you keep these courses up to date? And what I'll say is that a lot of the core concepts in our courses are evergreen. So what that means is that like the principles of behavioral economics or the principles of healthcare operations aren't necessarily going to change a lot. But with every iteration of every course, we make sure that it's up to date, it's relevant, and the material, there's a way that faculty demonstrate the relevance of the material to our current situation. So there's always that changing material in every class to make sure that the course is tailored to a changing healthcare landscape and also a changing social landscape. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Catherine.
All right, thanks, Adam. Let me go back to sharing my presentation. So just 4 more slides, and then we'll get into the Q&A, where you can ask questions, and it could be a little bit more conversational. And just a couple of things I want to reiterate from what Adam said is that the courses are very predictable, so you know what to expect, and that'll help you kind of schedule your work and your other time. Or schedule when you'll do your classwork. The courses are flexible. They're meant to be for people who are working full-time. And you'll be well supported. There's a team and a literal team of humans behind the course who are there to help you succeed. So you won't be just all alone out there online. Right? Always a question that comes up is tuition. Students at Penn pay tuition on a credit basis, so based on the number of credits they've registered for in a given semester. And the way that Penn counts course credits is they use something called course units, or CU. You'll see CU on these tables up here. 1 CU is equivalent to what a traditional semester-long course would be, so often that would be called a 3 or 4 credit course at a lot of other colleges. So to give an example, in the MHCI, one of those 6-week core courses is 1 CU, and students take 11 CUs total to earn this degree. For the upcoming academic year, 2021 to 22, we're expecting the rate to be $5,871 per 1 CU. So with 11 CUs total, the ballpark estimate for total cost of the entire degree is around $64,500 for the whole program. And of course, rates are always subject to change, but we'll keep you updated on that if anything does change. Students pay for the degree in a few different ways. There are no scholarships or grants available from the program directly. Some students are self-funded, some students are able to use tuition assistance from their employers, and some students choose to pursue financial aid from federal loans, and that's something that we can help talk you through if that's something that you're interested in. Just to give you a heads up, if you are thinking about maybe pursuing federal loans, you need to be taking at least 2 CUs in a semester to be eligible for loans in that semester. So if you're on the 20-month track, which you can see in the table on the right, you'll always be taking at least 2 CUs a semester. You'll be eligible for loans in every semester. If you're on the 3-year track, because the courses are more spread out, there are some semesters in which you would be taking fewer than 2 CUs in a semester. So on the 3-year track, again, you would not be eligible for loans in every semester, in some, but not all. Okay, we'll move along so we can get to the Q&A soon. Just before we wrap up, I do want to mention that the department offers a couple of certificate options if you decide that maybe doing a full master's degree isn't the right choice for you. There's a graduate certificate. In the graduate certificate, you can take up to 4 actual MHCI courses. So these are graduate level credit-bearing courses that can be transferred into the master's degree if you later change your mind and decide to apply to the degree. And then there's also a professional development certificate. Those classes, while they cover a lot of the same topics, are not credit-bearing classes. They're a little bit different. So they can't be transferred into the degree, but it's a good option if you're looking for a way to learn the content, but without quite as much of the commitment. And if you have any questions about the certificates, you can see more on our website, improvinghealthcare.net, or feel free to contact me and I'll be happy to talk to you about them a little bit more. And finally, if you decide that this all sounds like it's a good fit for you and what you want to do, to apply to the program, you want to make sure you apply by our final application deadline, which is May 1st, and then you would start the program in August 2021. Admissions is not rolling, so even if you apply now, your application will be reviewed after that May 1st deadline. We review everybody at the same time. To be eligible to apply, you have to have a bachelor's degree, but it doesn't have to be in any specific field. And you need to have at least 3 years of professional experience in healthcare or in a related field. And that's because you need to have enough experience in the field to draw from to be able to do the assignments and courses and participate in the discussions. So to apply, you would fill out the online application form. You can find that on improvinghealthcare.net. And in the online form, you'll be asked to upload a personal statement, a current CV or resume, and it'll ask you for contact information for 2 recommenders. And just a heads up, once you fill in your recommender's contact information on the application, they'll automatically get an email from the application system asking them to fill out a recommendation form. So you just might want to give them a heads up ahead of time so they know to expect that email and they know what it is. And then finally, the only piece that you need to take care of that's outside of that online application form are transcripts. So we ask for official transcripts from colleges that you've attended previously. We do require electronic transcripts that are sent directly from the college to us. If for some reason your previous college can only do hard copy transcripts, just contact me, email me, and let me know, and we'll figure out an alternative way to get them. General rule of thumb for transcripts, if you've completed a degree somewhere, if you've done a substantial amount of coursework at a school, or coursework that's particularly relevant to this application, we definitely want to see that transcript. If, say, you took one summer course at a local college that's not really related, you don't necessarily have to get a whole transcript just for that. So if you're not sure whether or not to include it, you can always ask me, or you can err on the side of including it just in case. There's no standardized test required and no application fee to apply. So once again, that final deadline is May 1st. You should have all of your application materials in by May 1st, including the transcripts and including the recommendation forms. And if any questions come up, you can always contact me. So that's the end of the presentation. We can take the rest of the time for any questions that you have, and feel free, if you want to speak up, you can unmute yourself and ask directly, or if you want to type it in the chat, you can go ahead and do that. And I'll get back to a couple of questions that I saw come into the chat earlier. One of them was about what kind of projects students do. So that would be specifically in those last few lab courses when you're working on a project idea. And I can give you a few examples here. I have a list of what students have worked on this year. We have, actually, this is Jean's project, improving teamwork in surgery, projects on improving digital payment mechanisms, care coordination for diabetic patients. That's from one of our nurse students. Developing enhanced transparency in hospital pricing. Creating a digital platform to enhance social connection for better patient outcomes. Rare disease biospecimen acquisition. So just like our students, there's a big mix of different topics, but a lot of them revolve around improving transparency, improving integration, and improving patient care. I see a question from Mike. Can the work experience be adjacent and not directly in healthcare? Yeah, if your work experience is related to healthcare but not directly in it, you're still definitely welcome to apply. Make sure in your personal statement that you're making a strong case for how the experience that you do have can translate into an impactful career in healthcare. And I'd also encourage everybody to check out on our admissions page on the right side, there's a link to tips and guidance for filling out your application. So it kind of goes into what the admissions committee is looking for, say, in the personal statement. So check that out, and that can really help you with your application.
Catherine, did you mention the cost for the certificate, professional certificate program versus the CUs?
Sure. So the graduate certificate, the credit-bearing one, it's the same cost per course as the MHCI because you're taking MHCI courses. So that's about $5,800 per course for the graduate certificate. And then for the professional development certificate, they're 4-week non-credit-bearing courses. I believe it's $1,000 per course. I think Heather's on the call. If that's wrong, just correct me.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. Appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. I know there was a question in the chat a lot earlier. Somebody was interested in learning more about nudge units. On the student slide, that was one of the sectors shown that students come from. We have a few students who have worked in nudge units. There is a nudge unit at Penn, and they work on a lot of behavioral economics related projects. So things like application platforms for increasing patient, compliance, say for taking medications or for showing up to appointments, things like that. But if you're really interested in learning more about them, I'd be happy to connect you to somebody who works in a nudge unit, and you can talk to them individually. Let's see, what are some jobs this degree could qualify a person for? There's a huge variety. There's no one specific path in healthcare innovation because like our students come from totally different backgrounds and have totally different career paths. But I can give you some examples of different jobs that students and alumni have gotten either while they were in the degree or after they graduated. And about half of our alumni have gotten a new job since graduating from the MHCI. But just a few examples. One of our nurse students got a job. It was a role newly created for her because of her innovation skills she got in the program. The title is a bundled payment for care improvement navigator at her health system, so helping kind of advocating for patients and helping them navigate that process. Another nurse student recently got a new job as a partner manager for connected health operations and clinical transformation, and that's at a medical device company. One of our physician students, who's a family practice physician, became director of practice transformation and diversity and inclusion for her practice group. And that was very directly as a result of her time in the MHCI. On the non-clinical side, we've had some people say in digital health startups who've had job changes. One student who was head of growth at a health startup recently took on a job as CEO of a subsidiary of a major health insurance company. Another student recently got a job as director of clinical adoption at a health analytics software company. So there's a really mixed bag. You can go in a lot of different directions. But the point is that it'll prepare you for jobs that are looking for these skill sets, so that are looking for people who can identify and solve problems in a practical way. Do you have an idea of this year's theme for the cohort beginning in August? I assume you're talking about the seminar in August. We usually have a theme every year that it follows. I don't know the theme yet, but it's something that we're going to be working on in the next few weeks, so stay tuned for that. What would be the benefit of a certificate versus a master's program? The master's program obviously goes into a lot, you can dig a lot deeper into all of these topics, and you'll get a lot more networking, and you'll really build a strong network of innovators with your fellow students. The certificate program I would recommend to somebody who doesn't want to do a full master's degree. Maybe they already have postgraduate degrees and don't feel they need another one. Maybe they don't feel they have the time for it, but they still want to learn the skills. It really depends on your specific goals and what you're trying to do. But if you're trying to decide between the two, feel free to email me, and I'd be happy to talk through with you individually what you're looking for, what might be the best fit. What would be the top job description someone might have when they have this degree? Again, it's a really mixed bag, depends on the student's background and career path and what they're looking to do. Any other questions? I know it's 5 o'clock, so if you have to go, feel free to go, but I'm happy to stay on a few more minutes. If anyone else has questions, you can unmute yourself and ask it or type it in the chat. If not, thank you so much for taking the time today to learn about the Master of Healthcare Innovation. The session's recorded. We will send a recording to you, and I'll put my email in the chat again in case you have any questions you'd like to ask individually outside the session. Feel free to email me.
Thank you so much, Catherine.
Thanks, you're welcome. Okay, you're welcome, everyone. I hope that means everyone got their questions answered. And again, if you still have any more questions, feel free to email me, and I'm happy to talk to you. Thanks for coming, and have a good night.